Hey guys, it's CS Joseph with csjoseph.life doing another episode on our series Virtue and Vice. Tonight's type, we're going to be talking about the ISFP, also known as the artist. They are informative, responding control behind the scenes. And the artisan temperament, SP types, freedom-based creators. So the ISFP, one of the freer of all the types, given that they are a freedom-based creator, but where they're able to take their art is just absolutely astounding. And that usually comes as a result of their virtue, and in some cases their vice. It really just depends on how it's all applied and what the practical application is, right? So, ISFPs. I've had the pleasure of knowing plenty of ISFPs, and each of them more towards their virtue and some of them more towards their vice. But regardless, they're enjoyable no matter what state they're in, that I've found. But in terms of their ability to produce and their ability to create art, create amazing art, be that from playing the violin, landscaping, movies. And I mean, I'm being serious when I say landscaping, right? You just give one an excavator and you have no idea what they're going to do to change the physical environment of the property in which they live. It's completely different and a very interesting development, right? So, what does that mean? It means a lot, especially in terms of their virtue and vice. So, their virtue is diligence, and their vice is idleness. Diligence versus idleness. I gotta be honest with you, like from ISFP point of view, the ones that I know of at least, they are literally the most diligent of all the types. I have never seen somebody work so hard. I mean, I could make the argument that the ISTP is probably the most hardworking of all the types. I really could make that argument. But as far as that goes, it's not really their primary, right? Their primary is joy versus melancholy, but ISFP, the primary is diligence versus idleness. Why are they so diligent? Well, it's because they have to feel good about what they're doing. When they start an art project, they're not necessarily going to finish, right, until the project is done, because they're not going to feel good till it's done, essentially. That's just something that they often have to deal with in that regard. Because their art, or whatever it is they're focusing on doing, is so important to them. It's actually a representation of who they are on the inside, right? Part of their core nature, right? That art means everything to them. Anything that they're going to spend their time on, that they're going to focus on, that they're going to take charge on, whatever project that is, they do it from the point of view of it being an art, right? It's no longer just a mechanic. It's no longer just a random point of view. It's no longer a means to an end. It is all about putting every fiber of their being into what it is they're doing, right? They have to feel good about what they're doing at the end of the day. So that's what makes them so diligent. My former father-in-law, for example, he is an ISFP. He is the most diligent man I have ever met. He is like 74, 75 years old. He works on a farm, runs a farm. He's out there from sun up to sundown with, the nap in the middle of the day. And he's constantly inventing new things, new ways of doing things. He's got his tractors, he's got his farming equipment, and he consistently produces on his crops on a regular basis. And it's an art to him. He's always coming up with new strategies, like, for example, coming up with a compost tea to see if that would give him a better yield or a better quality crop, right? Because to him, the land itself is his canvas with which he paints upon. I remember one time, left to his own devices, all of a sudden you come back and there's a new pond on the property, right? And it's like, wait a minute, how did that happen? Where did that pond come from? Well, again, the land is his canvas, and he diligently works on it. His work is never done. He designed his own house, for example. Designed it, and it's a house unlike anything I have ever seen. Completely unique to him and his own design, his own brand, as it were. And that house is completed, and I've been in it, and it is the most amazing thing I have ever seen. A lot of people don't really realize just how amazing, technology or architecture can be, and that an ISFP can produce it on their own. That's amazing. It's really amazing. And he diligently works at it every day. Doesn't matter if it's Saturday or Sunday, he's out working, he's out producing, he's out making sure every single moment of his time is of value. And that right there is the foundation behind ISFP diligence, because they have to make sure that every moment of time that they spend is of value. That even includes going to the store. They're not going to feel good about going to the store or running errands. They're just not going to feel good about it unless they're able to get multiple birds with one stone, right? They're not just going to go willy-nilly and do one thing. They have to have a plan, right? They have to feel good about getting a list of tasks done all at once, right? Such is the way of the ISFP and their diligence. Diligence is everything. And when they're working in their virtue, they can accomplish anything. You can see examples of this from the ISFPs who were diligently working and producing their art for the Renaissance, for their patrons, etc. Was Leonardo an ISFP? Was Michelangelo an ISFP? Who knows? Many people argue that Da Vinci was an ENTP, but it's possible. Very possible, actually. But at the same time, the ISFP diligence is very prevalent within the Renaissance. So, diligence is everything, and it all comes from the fact that what they're doing has to have a value, has to have a core value behind what they're doing. To them, value can be placed on something if it has volume, right? Value and volume go together for ISFPs, actually most FITE users. Because the ISFP, like most FI users, if they can accomplish a lot of tasks, like a huge list of things at once, then they can feel good about themselves, right? Because it's a list, right? It's all about that list. Well, that list can also be their downfall. And that's where their vice of idleness comes in. Sometimes when an ISFP is presented with a plan or a task list that is so huge, they look at it and they're like, really? And then they lose all motivation because it's just so overwhelming for them. It is completely overwhelming. And then they go idle. And they end up, instead of being the most productive human being in society, well, I'm just not in the mood for it anymore, man. Or I'm not in the mood to do this, man. If they don't see the value in what they're doing, they're not going to do it. And they literally become the most idle wouldn't really say lazy so much as they're just not in the mood to produce. Because if it's not coming from them and their own core value system inside of themselves, they're not going to have any motivation to do anything. If it's being imposed upon them by someone else, they're going to take their jolly sweet time. They're going to drag their feet. They're going to lack all motivation. They're not going to accomplish anything. That's why if you have an ISFP working for you, you have to be very careful, because if they don't buy into your vision, expect them to treat that job, that position that you hired them for, as just another 9 to 5. And they will do the absolute least amount of work possible throughout the day because they're just not in the mood for it. They don't care. They don't care about your vision. It doesn't match their value system. And that lack of matching in the value system just means, well, I'm not interested, right? If they don't value what's being done, they're just going to be as idle as possible. Again, dragging their feet. It gets even worse. Let's say an ISFP is in a family situation, right? Parenting children, and their spouse is not interested in what they've accomplished. They're trying to show their spouse or their family members, hey, look what I did. Hey, look what I did. You know? And because it's, hey, look what I did, you can see all these amazing things I made for you, right? Well, that's the difference. If you're ignoring the ISFP is just going to go super idle and not be interested in handling chores anymore or parenting children anymore. Because from their point of view, it's like, well, if they don't think that well of me, then I'm not really interested in doing anything for them right now. I'm going to do something that I like to do. That's very normal for ISFPs. Very, very normal. Diligence versus idleness. An ISFP, once they get going, there is nothing that's going to stop them. They are the unstoppable force. But it's one of the reasons why they are built for a relationship with the immovable objects of the 16 types, which are SFJs, right? SFJs are built to take punishment, right? They're built to basically take what the ISFP dishes. They're the unstoppable force. They meet the immovable object, right? So that's the whole point. That's the whole point behind them. That's the whole point behind that type. The idleness can be a problem. It could be a problem not just in their working relationship, it could be a problem in their romantic relationship, because it's like, oh, the ISFP has become idle with the relationship. The ISFP, it's like the ISFP all of a sudden just forgets that anniversaries exist, that Mother's Day is a priority. The ISFP will just start deprioritizing everything in the relationship. If the ISFP feels that what the ISFP is doing is not thought of highly enough, not appreciated, not valued, because the ISFP walks around worried that people don't value. They don't feel good about the ISFP. They don't value what the ISFP is doing, much less that the ISFP is afraid of what other people think of the ISFP. That could be a problem, right? So how do you avoid this? How do you combat this? Well, there are a couple of strategies. So if you're in a relationship with an ISFP and you need to get them back into being the most diligent of all the types, right? Get them back in their virtue. There are a couple of strategies that you could do it. One, always tell them that you think highly of them. Always allow them to show you what you're doing. Always appreciate the art that they're creating. Appreciate what they're showing to you, right? If you do this, they'll be like, wow. And they'll want to become more supportive of you, and they'll want to reciprocate that back to you. because they feel valued, because they see that you are continuing to be thoughtful towards them. Your thoughtfulness directly translates into productivity, diligence on the side of the ISFP. Just by you being thoughtful, just by you having them in mind, right? Just by you allowing them to get multiple birds with one stone and having a plan. I get that if you're like in an SFJ and you're in a relationship with an ISFP, that you need a plan and you're going to plan things out, but don't let your plans get in the way of the ISFP's plans, which they're kind of like little tacticians, and they'll make little mini plans based on situations they encounter. But they still have to feel good about that trip to town. They still have to feel good about any excursion off their home, because I remember ISFPs, they're behind the scenes, right? They want to be, they're the most comfortable in their own environment, comfortable closest to their canvases. Plural, what's the plural on that? Canvasi? I have no clue. But whatever canvas they're near, they need to be near their canvas so they can continue producing their art. They don't like being removed from their canvas. So it better be worth it to them that their canvas is removed, you know? That includes chores. Chores can take them away from their canvas. So if you need help with those chores, make a list. By producing a list, you'd be like, oh crap, there's a lot of stuff I gotta deal with. If you just hand them like a one-off thing every now and then, they're not going to remember. It's not really gonna mean as much, right? So by making a list, it's like, okay, well, this is a challenge, you know, and engage their diligence. And they're like, I'm going to go destroy this list. And they handle this list and they feel so good about themselves afterwards. And then you can be like, oh, Mr. ISFP or Miss ISFP, thank you so much for doing this list for me, because I feel so good that you tackled all of these things. And I think so highly of you because you tackle all these things. And thank you for giving me the best experience ever, right? That just further energizes the ISFP, and then they end up getting even more diligent and able, you know, and even more productive. And they start to prioritize things, even, you know, prioritizing their relationship with you, right? Because they live in a world of priority. Why? Well, it's because it's what they value, right? And you're trying to get them to value you. You need to make sure that you're thoughtful, and you make sure you give them the lists, give them the structure that they need, right? And it doesn't have to be necessarily structure per se. They're more structure oriented themselves. It's all about just starting the process, right? And then they'll run with it from there. You give them an opportunity to take charge, basically. Turn that list of things, that honeydew list of things that they need to do, into a project, and they become the project manager, right? They may even like delegate to your children, right, to handle some of those tasks, whatever. But at least they have a list, they have a challenge they could tackle, and as long as you respond well, saying, hey, I had a great experience about this, you know, because you handle all these things, or you're so thankful, so grateful for them, you'll energize them. And they'll stay diligent instead of having the life sucked out of them, instead of being demotivated, right? So if you're an ISFP and you're being pretty idle, ask yourself, why is that? Are you at a dead-end job? Or are you at a job where you just don't respect the leadership, or you don't agree with the vision? You think that the products that they're making are really low quality, you know? Well, I invite you to make a different product, right? For example, I met an ISFP one time. He's a good man. He went to gunsmithing class, and he actually worked at for a gunsmith for a while, and did a really great job, but he really couldn't see it. He really couldn't see what they were doing, and it just became another 9 to 5. Yet he's very passionate about guns, right, and gunsmithing, right? Well, then he got an offer for working at a manufacturing company, except the manufacturing company offered him to be the source of the vision, the source of the art of the firearms that they were making. You know, they had customers like, I believe it was various police organizations. A lot of SWAT teams were their main customers, right? So in this particular situation, this ISFP was thrilled and super diligent because he knew that the weapons he was creating were of the absolute highest quality because they were him. They were basically representing his personal brand, right? That personal brand was everything to him, right? Because every single weapon is his baby. And his weapons were going to be supporting, men in uniform, men and women in uniform. And that's something he would be able to be a part of because his art was there on the street being utilized in a way that would support society. And he was so diligent that he became the manager of their assembly line. He ran their assembly line. And that's just one example, right? One anecdotal example from my experience. But again, ISFPs, if you're in like a job situation that's just going nowhere because you're not seeing the vision, you don't agree with how things are being done there, move on. Get a new job. Seriously. Or start your own job. Become your own person, right? Create your own company. Build your own widget that's so much better than theirs and become the competition. Everyone's going to think highly of your product anyway because you know how to do it better than they do. So do it. Get off your butt and do it. Stop being idle and become diligent. Another example that of this is in relationships. If you're not in a relationship where you're just not really motivated to go for it, where you're just kind of going with it because you feel for some reason that you should stay with this relationship, like you owe them something or whatever, no. Be true to yourself. You have the right to feel good about your relationships. You have the right to be with somebody that loves to receive the sensation that you're giving them. You have the right to be in a relationship that gives you the freedom to do whatever you want to do every day. You have the right to be in a relationship where somebody thinks highly of you, right? So, end the relationship. Move on. Become diligent in finding a different relationship and be diligent for that person, that new relationship. You could have literally the best relationship in your life. Get off your butt and move on. It's the most healthiest thing you could do for yourself and for them. Let's be honest. If you're in a relationship with somebody that you shouldn't, you're kind of like wasting their time and your time. So just move on from that and have nothing to do with that person moving forward. It's healthy for both of you. It's the good thing to do. Yes, I know it creates conflict and you don't like conflict that much because you got to feel good about yourself when you have this high moral awareness. But you're not doing yourself any favors and you're not doing them any favors by staying with them. So I recommend move on. Please move on for the rest of us. You have every right to be with somebody that appreciates you for who you are and they appreciate your art and will give you the freedom to produce art, right? Whatever you value, the freedom to do and produce whatever you value. Because that's what your art is all about. It's about how you feel. It's about what you value and what others think highly of. Diligence versus idleness. Guys, it's important that we keep our ISFPs as diligent as possible. Because if they are diligent, that means what they're doing is of value. And if they're not doing something that's of value, that's a waste. And let me tell you, I'm against waste. And so also is ISFPs, big time. So if we're going to have a better society, our ISFPs out there have to be diligent. And they have to be motivated to be diligent. They have to be in a place. They have to feel safe. They have to have the freedom to be diligent in that way. Otherwise, they're going to be idle. They're not going to do anything. They're just going to sit around. They're just going to be going through the motions, doing that 9 to 5, wasting time, doing as little work as possible. Why? Well, because they're not in the mood. Why? Well, because they don't believe in the product that's being made, because the quality is low, or because management is abusive, or whatever. Their lack of diligence is not necessarily on them. It's more actually based on the situation. What's wrong with the canvas, or what's wrong with the environment in which the canvas is sitting or standing? Got to do some root cause analysis there. That's not to say that ISFPs can get lazy, but if you give them a little bit more information and you inform them and give them strategies on how to deal with the situation they're in, oh, you're right, I should do it that way. And then they're back on the diligence track yet again. such as the way of diligence versus idleness. If you found this lecture to be useful, helpful, entertaining, educational, please subscribe to the channel here on YouTube or on our podcast. If you have any questions about ISFPs or their virtue and vice, please leave it in the comments section and I will answer your questions. I read every comment. Just did another plan today for the content schedule. Added another 32 videos that I'm going to be doing. So got a lot of content planned. And my website's almost done. We'll be getting that fixed pretty soon. I'll let you guys know when that's done. So the next video that I'll be doing is going to be the INTP, Virtue and Vice. And should have that out soon. So I'll see you guys tonight.